And in this work, have you seen that there are any maybe common myths or misconceptions when it comes to philanthropy that you would just like to debunk right at the top of this recording?
I mean, there's a whole bunch. One of them, maybe I'll expand on one that I kind of already mentioned in a nuanced way, and go straight at another one. So the other one is that charities are ineffective.
Mm.
I hear as what I would in sales language call an objection to charitable giving is, well, charities they just don't create any change in the world. And I think that's completely false. Um, Charities are the same as any other type of organization, any other business. So call it like a ticket, like a sector like restaurants. Is every restaurant good? First of all, objectively, the answer is no. Not every restaurant is good. So not every charity is good. There's going to be some bad charities out there, but but that's the few and far between where you're kind of like that's objectively a good charity and that's objectively a bad charity. In most cases, it's a subjective analysis, right? Like you like Indian food, I might not like Indian food. So I think that the Indian restaurants aren't good and you think they are good, right? And so charity's much more like that, right? Um, so this idea that charities are ineffective is I think it's rooted in lack of education and lots of lack of experience that donors have to be able to recognize what effective charities are and what it actually means to be an effective charity. But I think that's one of these myths that I'd like to bust. It's very, very rare for me to meet a highly engaged donor who says charities are generally ineffective. And when they say that, they usually go introspective to themselves and they go, why is it that I keep bumping into or choosing, quote, ineffective charities to give my money to? Non-engaged donors, in my experience, often go to the ineffective or charities are ineffective objection almost as a reason to write off why they're not giving money at all. And it's almost more of an excuse in my experience than it is an actual true complaint. And the reason I say that is because when you ask people and you go, well, tell me about, all this experience I have with charities just across the board being ineffective. Tell me more about that. They start to stumble on their words. They don't actually have much to report, et cetera, et cetera. The other myth that I raised earlier that I'd just like to sort of debunk is this idea. It's not quite a myth, but this idea that like if we have the intention of being good people, that's what makes the difference in the world. It's action that actually creates the change, right? So I also meet all sorts of people who really intend on being engaged in community and want to be genuinely feels like they want to be engaged, but they're not. Now, why they're not, those leads to more complicated and interesting conversations. But this myth that like intending to be a community engage with community is a lot different than actually doing it. And you actually, unfortunately, it's like exercise. You got to do it.
I can imagine another area that you have to work through because you do work at this interesting intersection of impact, sustainability, technology. I come from the tech space and I know that the second you're talking about data, especially anything that's financial data, there's a lot of concern around trust. So, how have you navigated that? Because I'd imagine that's maybe not a barrier to entry, but it's an area of concern when you're dealing with the donor community because you're dealing with personal information, you're dealing with financial information, and then that's translating to how they impact.
Just to go back to my myth though question, your myth question is my response to with ineffective charities. That's the part of trust where I find the most materiality in the charity sector in terms of like, and there's some truth to it's not like so many myths that are rooted in truth, right? It's not that everyone who says charities are ineffective are wrong. It's almost certainly rooted in some version of truth and some version of personal experience. But across the board, it just doesn't necessarily apply, or in my view, it doesn't apply. So, how do you get people to the point where they almost trust themselves to engage with their time, talent, and treasure in a way where they're giving it away? And that's the level of trust that I think services like ours and really play a big role. Because I think a lot of trust, you know, is rooted in getting the person to trust themselves. I mean, so I'm happy to talk about like, well, let's trust the outsiders or can we trust charitable impact and things like that. But can you trust yourself with the decision of
Mm.
allocating money out to charities in a way that makes you feel like you're not just throwing, good money away to be spent poorly by someone else, right? And my experience with that is that when you get people into things that they are actually really interested in and that they know something about, they have a more agency and experience saying what is actually a good, good programs, in whatever they know about this area of, like, let's say it's climate change. And and then they get over the trust hurdles more quickly because they can identify charities that are doing good programmatic work. They understand it, even if they're not hardcore pro, you know, enough to go, yeah, I really support that. And I'm willing to trust because I know the organization I work at, people trust us all the time. And we're not here, to try to do anything bad for people. Right. And so and then they sort of suspend that, and they pass it on to someone else and go, well, then they're probably trying to do their best as well, and the trust problem starts to resolve itself. That's the area in the charity sector where I think the most work needs to go into, and it's actually educating donors, and I guess kind of also educating charities at how to dialogue and communicate with donors to develop that trust over time.
Having looked at even just the past 5 years, so 2020 to now, it feels like that landscape has changed so much when it comes to corporate sustainability. Do you see any trends as to where you think we're going in terms of companies getting involved in terms of broader impact, call it over the next 5 years or so? And if it helps to maybe look at how it has changed over those past 5 years, by all means, use that as well.
I'll tell you where I think things are going to continue to trend, and I think this is a long-standing trend, but a slow-moving one also, is that the trend, in particularly in corporate philanthropy, is going to move towards the empowerment of the customer and or the employee, and away from the company dictating. There's my manipulative language, but to try to make the point, from the company dictating, what charities are going to be supported and why. Right. So to take a couple examples, in an employee workplace giving program, it's shifting from, here's the charity that the boss says that we're going to support, everyone rally around and give to this, to, hey, employees, thanks a lot. We're going to give you money for you to give away, either in the form of matching or just by allocating some money for you so you can give it to the charity of your choice. Now, back to the trust thing, how does that overcome trust? Instead of everyone having to trust the boss who's so good at choosing charities because they're good at whatever the company is, which makes no sense. They start to go in and go, well, what charities do I trust? And am I going to trust myself to allocate this money? And then the other part is that the companies start to see that, in my experience, they start to see more value from giving charitable dollars, because the value to the corporation in giving charity, especially if you're being sort of true to finance. Okay. So less true to the spirit and the heart of everything and more true to finances. How do you return value to the shareholder by giving charity? Well, it's by increasing the value of employees who feel, better about the culture of the company and feel more engaged when they come to work. And on the customer side, same type of story, different language, have customers who feel like they're shopping with a company that actually cares about, them and maybe the communities they live in. And how would you ever achieve that? Well, one way is to transfer the charitable dollars to the customer for them to give away. By way of example, just sorry to go on, but when you go to you're shopping, you go to the till and they're like, hey, you want to put an extra dollar in towards this random charity that you
Right.
hear about when you shop there? Like, the future of that, in my view, is it's going to move away from that into, thanks for shopping with us. Here's a dollar from the company that we're going to give to you to give to any charity of your choice.
Hmm.
Instead of the person going through 85,000 registered charities and trying to, at the till, trying to choose, it's going to go into an account for them that they can then give away. And some form of data may come back, probably should be anonymized data, comes back to the to the company saying, hey, that dollar that was allocated to customer XYZ went to child poverty. This other dollar went to youth education. This other dollar went to climate change. Isn't it interesting that 2/3 of your customers care about children?